I've heard you're a bit tasty. No messing around or you get a slap.
Determination to steal what you can and run from the nation. Hey, what do you say? Automate a secret to speed from a getaway. Take it to the edge, there's nowhere to hide. And call up the boy, let's go for the joyride. Let's go for the joyride.
As you all know, I am a humongous fan of Grand Theft Auto. I've talked about my love for the series many times in this channel in the past, in videos that are very bad and I would not watch them if I were you. So, we all know the hugely successful Grand Theft Auto series, starting with Grand Theft Auto 1 back in 1997 for the PlayStation 1, and the last game being released being GTA 5 back in 2013. Please don't watch my old videos, they are fucking ass. But I enjoy all of the games, and Grand Theft Auto is a phenomenon gaming franchise. You can ask anyone on the streets and they would know what Grand Theft Auto is, whether it be the crime or just GTA Online, which I don't hate, but I'm just saying shark cards are a ripoff. Don't invest in shark cards. Now, despite people mostly assuming Grand Theft Auto was just GTA 5, there are so many games, like the early 3D games which introduced the franchise into 3D. Now, these games are very outdated and are kind of bad, to be honest, but they all have a fun and challenging vibe to them, with the best one being San Andreas, which most people, including myself, believe to be the best out of the whole series, even despite the graphics being pretty shit. But what were the beginnings of Grand Theft Auto like? Most people just assume that's just GTA 5 and that's it. But way before GTA 5 or the 3D era games, there's a set of Grand Theft Auto games made back in the late 90s that are kind of forgotten and people don't talk about to this day. And I want to talk about them. And these games are Grand Theft Auto 1, Grand Theft Auto London, and Grand Theft Auto 2. These games are made for the PS1 and PC computers back in the late 90s. These games use a top-down perspective for gameplay. The developers went with a style of gameplay due to the limited power of the PS1 and PC computers at the time. And according to Dan Houser, they wanted the games to feel like you're watching a car chase from the perspective of a helicopter, something you would see on a crime news channel.
The original game was based on watching too many American movies and watching all that overhead helicopter chase footage, right. Which was the only camera we could use due to the limitations on the old hardware.
Now in this video, I want to talk about the early 2D GTA games and see if they still hold up to this day and if they are worth playing. With that being said, let's start off with... Now, to start off, the development of Grand Theft Auto 1 is very lengthy and very confusing, but to make a long story short, the game was in development at DMA Design in Edinburgh, Scotland. It started out as a simple cops and robbers game called Race and Chase. Based on this design document that was leaked a while back, they were aiming to make a fun and addictive cops and robbers game where the player could either play as the cops or robber in various game modes, such as a bank heist or a race. After a while, the game was going nowhere and it just wasn't working. The developers and programmers hated working on this game and they just could not make it fun. But there was one thing that the developers liked. There was a glitch in the code where the AI police would ram into the player's car, and this was really interesting to them and they really enjoyed this glitch. And also, around this time, two British brothers from BMG Interactive, named Dan Houser and Sam Houser, would step in and see this game, which around this time was basically about to be canned, and saw that there was so much potential in the game. So they decided to take the concept of this AI police thing ramming the players and completely remove the whole cops and robbers thing and make it just about the robbers. So after some delays, changes, and lots of work, the game was finally released on October 21st, 1997. And yeah, that's kind of it. Now, what is Grand Theft Auto 1 about, you ask? Well, it's basically set in 3 cities: Liberty City, which is based on New York, Vice City, which is based on Miami, Florida, and San Andreas, which at the time was based on San Fierro. You play as many different characters. On the PlayStation 1 version, you play as just 4 characters, but on the PC version, you play as 8 characters, and they're female characters. Damn, Rockstar, pretty impressive, huh? Now, in terms of story, there isn't much of a story. Your character just kind of spawns in the game, and you just kind of drive around the place, doing various jobs, unlocking new maps, and that's really it. In terms of an actual story, there are these, weird cutscenes that kind of tie in the whole game together.
Hey, pretty boy! You done real good for me, no? Now it's time for you to find out why they call me the donkey, huh? Ha ha! I'm gonna reward you personal this time!
I would say that these cutscenes were impressive for the time, but honestly, they're just kind of creepy and weird. They kind of look like something from a Sega CD game. They're just kind of weird and creepy. Although I will say the artwork is pretty impressive, I'm not gonna lie. Now, in terms of the gameplay aspect, it's nothing really special. You just kind of drive around the place, steal cars, do various jobs, and kill people. That's kind of really it. There isn't much else you can do other than, like I said, steal cars, drive around, and do jobs. The jobs vary on who you work for, like stealing a certain type of vehicle, killing a certain person, stuff like that. And I want to say it's fun, but like, it's not really fun. My main issue with this game are the controls. I'm just gonna get out of the way, these controls are straight up terrible. I know this was originally developed for the old DualShock controller in mind, without the thumbsticks, but controlling this game is a complete nightmare. Like, it's so confusing and just doesn't really make sense. Like I said, I do understand why the controls are like this, but it is very confusing. And I would say something negative about the 2D top-down perspective, but honestly, I don't mind it. It's a very unique gameplay aspect, which is obviously done due to money and time, but I actually really like it. And sure, the graphics are weird to say the least. The 3 cities were rendered in 3D, but the characters and cars and all that were rendered as 2D sprites. It's an interesting design choice, but I kind of like it. Now, would I consider this game to be amazing? Honestly, not really. It's not a terrible game, but it isn't a great game either. There are a lot of issues like the weird graphics and impossible controls, but it has a charm to it, and like I said, this was the first Grand Theft Auto game. Without it, we wouldn't have Grand Theft Auto as it is today. So I would give it that. Unlike Grand Theft Auto 3, which is actually a really fun, enjoyable game, even if the controls are really bad as well, this game is just sort of annoying and can be kind of difficult at points. And what's also really annoying is it's hard to actually enjoy the game, since when you get shot by the police, you're instantly dead. Like, that's it. And when you lose all of your lives, you have to start from the beginning. It's really annoying and it's just not that fun. Like I said, it is a kind of fun game for retro gamers to just kind of relax and play, but if you're a hardcore gamer looking for a fun game to play, this ain't it, chief. I really wanted to enjoy this game, but it's just really outdated and was not that fun. Even at the time, this game didn't really get the best reviews. Critics at the time gave it pretty mixed reviews, mainly because of the graphics, since at the time people were expecting big 3D games, and this was not really a 3D game, so critics were very disappointed, but general audiences really liked the game and its freedom and shit. And honestly, I agree with the critics, it's not really that good. Anyway, let's move on to the next Grand Theft Auto game, released 2 years later in 1999, which is So, before I talk about this game, I just want to say, Grand Theft Auto London, 1969, very classic Rockstar, making a 69 joke in 1999, proud of you Rockstar. Now, this game wasn't a direct sequel to Grand Theft Auto 1, as it was an expansion pack developed by Rockstar Toronto and released in April 1999. At the time, the game got fairly favorable reviews. What do I think about it? Well, allow me to talk about it. You basically get Grand Theft Auto 1, and you set it in London. That's basically it, to be honest. Alright, there's more about the game, so let me talk about it. So in this game, you play as multiple different characters, but no female characters. Hashtag cancel Rockstar already, they have gone far enough. And you even get to play as Shrek in the game, which is pretty swag, I'm not gonna lie. And you basically just steal cars, do missions, all that crack. Nothing new, but it's still a lot of fun. I actually prefer this game over the first game, mainly because they just make fun of British people. This game definitely has a lot more humor to it and a lot more charm to it than the first game. Like, the first game was fine, but it was just kind of, you know, your typical stealing car game. But in this game, there's a lot more character to it, mainly with all the British slang here. Like, this game ruthlessly makes fun of British people, with all the accents and the way people talk. It's amazing. Even these new cutscenes, which are honestly fucking awful.
Listen, right, we're looking for a lad who can do his stuff. I've heard you're a bit tasty. No messing around or you get a slap. Remember, I'm the monkey and you're the cheese grater, so no messing around.
Like, they look worse than the first game, and the voice acting is genuinely terrible. Like, it sounds like it was done by some American guy who was woken up at 5 AM and had to do some British voices. It's so bad, but I love it at the same time. And that's really it, to be honest. The controls are the same from the first game, which are really bad. I still do not like these controls, and I don't know if I'll ever get used to them. But I do understand why the controls are like this. And the graphics are basically the same and almost identical to the first game. Not much of an improvement, to be honest. Although I do love the weapon play here. I just prefer the weapon play over the first game. It's a lot more fun, to be honest. And the driving mechanics in this game are a lot different from the first game, since you have to drive to the left side of the road and the cars are just very different. And you even get to drive the iconic red double-decker bus. Very swag, I'm not gonna lie. And that's really it, to be honest. There's not much to say about this game other than it's an expansion pack about Grand Theft Auto, but set in London in 1969. That's it. There was another expansion pack released called Grand Theft Auto London 1961, released in July 1999. And it's basically the same game, but they added new missions, vehicles, and weapons, so yeah, it's still pretty good. Like I said, I actually prefer this game over the first Grand Theft Auto, as I feel there's a lot more character and humor here. Mainly because they just make fun of British people, because fuck the British. If you want a simple 2D game where they make fun of British people, this is a pretty good game, I'm not gonna lie. Like I said, it's not very different from the first game, since it's basically the same game but set in Britain. But there are some enjoyable aspects here that I think you'll really enjoy. Anyway, now that we're done with British Grand Theft Auto, let's move on to the next Grand Theft Auto game and the final 2D Grand Theft Auto game, which is Now, out of all the Grand Theft Auto games released, this is definitely the weirdest and the most mysterious game from the whole series. The location of this game is very strange. It takes place in a city called Anywhere City, not based on any real life locations unlike the other past games. And the game has a very weird futuristic vibe to it. It's not really known when and where exactly this game takes place. The game either takes place in July 2013, due to some police records that were found on the GTA 2 website, or it could take place in 1999, due to a character on the radio named Johnny Recaro saying how the new millennium is upon us. We don't really know about these questions, and Rockstar hasn't really said anything about the game, so it's all mainly speculation. And unlike the past Grand Theft Auto games, where you play as multiple different characters, in this game, you play as one character, named Claude Speed. Now, a lot of people have theorized if Claude Speed from GTA 2 is the same character as Claude from GTA 3. Rockstar has been asked about this, and they have basically said maybe. All we've really seen of Claude Speed is this one 3D concept art, where he honestly just looks like Nico Bellic from Grand Theft Auto 4, but we'll never know. Now enough for the rumors, let's get into the review. Now already, the graphics are much cleaner and look much better here. While the game still has a top-down perspective here, it feels more refined and cleaned up, although the controls here are still a pain to use. They are slightly improved on, but they are still really annoying to use. And I also really enjoy the location here. It has an awesome futuristic vibe to it and I really like it. Even looking at the concept art online, you can tell that they really want to make this game look futuristic while also keeping true to the first game's graphics and design. Also, the weapons and driving here are really good. They included a lot of new weapons here that are a lot of fun to use. And they also really improved the game's mechanics from the past games, and it's genuinely a great improvement. Although we still have the really bad controls, and while the graphics are still improved here, they are still very outdated. But they did include the option to save your game here, which I thought was a really great inclusion. They also added more gangs to the game and made the game feel more diverse. The most popular gang in the game is the Zaibatsu Corporation. Now, another thing that I really enjoy about this game is something that isn't really connected to the game, but it is tied to the game, and that's this live action short film that Rockstar made to promote the game and include as an intro in the game. I really enjoy this film. The film is about Claude Speed getting chased by some gang, then stealing a van that's owned by the Zaibatsu Corporation, then doing some jobs around Anywhere City, and then at the end getting killed by a Zaibatsu assassin. Like I said, I really enjoyed this film. It has a nice independent movie vibe to it, and I would highly recommend giving it a watch. It is silent and there's mainly music in the background, but like I said, I really enjoy this film. It's a nice simple film that basically helped promote Grand Theft Auto 2. Now back to the game. In my opinion, I personally think that Grand Theft Auto 2 has way more character in it than the past few games. For example, the NPCs in this game will actually try and rob you and even steal your car and say certain remarks about you. It is actually a really nice touch. It makes the game feel much more alive and has more character in it. It's much better than the past games, and I really enjoy it. And like I said, the game just feels much more alive and better than the past games. Rockstar clearly tried their best to make this game stand out from the past few games, and honestly they did a really good job. Looking past the similar graphics, this game is very different from the past games, and that's really good. Although around the time this game was released, critics did not like this game, mainly comparing the graphics to the first game, which I understand, but it's kind of unfair to compare a game based on its graphics since this was the PlayStation 1 and they couldn't do proper 3D, but I still really enjoy this game. It's an amazing, No, not at all. Is it terrible? God no. It's a massive improvement over the past few games, and it's actually kind of enjoyable to play. I would actually recommend playing this game if you haven't already.
In the city, respect is everything.
Though in conclusion, I would never call these games bad, not at all, but they have shown their age recently. Compared to the other Grand Theft Auto games, they just aren't as fun and addicting the other ones are. Like I said, I'm not saying they're bad, but there is definitely a lot of improvement from these games. But I have to give them this, that without them, we wouldn't have the Grand Theft Auto series as it is today. So these games definitely started off a humongous franchise, and there are some enjoyable aspects to these games, they aren't just complete trash. If you want some old simple 2D retro games to play, these games ain't too bad. Now that we're done with all these crime games, it's time to go into a more festive season. Boom. Christmas now. I'm going to be talking about Christmas films for a while, so let's enjoy the Christmas season, shall we lads? Thank you all for watching this video, hope you all have a swag day, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.